We're glad that you're here. Hopefully everybody got something to eat. You got stuff to eat because there's great stuff out there to eat. I'm Tina Whalen, the Dean of the College of Allied Health Sciences, and I'm pleased to be able, hi Tammy Pencil, you're there from nursing. See people that I recognize as well as students, and we're just pleased to have this offering every year. Is this our third year, or anybody know that we've been doing this series? And it gets better every year. We've got great speakers, and today's speaker is no exception. So I want to introduce you to Lizette Martinez. Ms. Martinez is actually, she told me, a graduate of UC, so she's one of our proud alumni. And she's currently serving as the Director of Diversity and Language Services at TriHealth. Her responsibilities include leading a multidimensional diversity and inclusion strategy, and she's working to enhance the inclusion efforts of the workforce and advocating to help achieve advantages of a diverse workforce. She's facilitating implementation of diversity change management initiatives, and she also works to provide linguistic services for patients who have limited English proficiency or who are deaf or hard of hearing. She's working strategically on this global corporate change perspective, and that makes her integral to the continued growth of TriHealth's commitment to diversity and inclusion. She's also a board member of the Greater Cincinnati Community Action Agency, where she's a member of Head Start and Public Relations Committees. She's a member of the Ohio Minority Supplier Development Council's Leadership Advocacy Committee, Advisory Committee, sorry, and is a member of the Cincinnati CDO Roundtable. And she also is a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Is anybody in this sorority, you guys? You have a sorority sister up here? And where she is an active member of the Phi Psi Omega graduate chapter. Now you have to understand, I was a GDI, so I didn't do Greek, so Greek letters are kind of Greek to me, so I'm sorry that I'm butchering the Greek. Lizette was a 40 under 40 awardee and one of the first women in Cincinnati to receive the Woman of Influence Award by Lead Magazine in 2013. And most recently, she was honored with the Multicultural Leadership Award by the Ohio Diversity Council. She's a proud member of AALDP Class of 21 and is a current graduate of Leadership Cincinnati Class of 38. I'm a graduate of Class of 34, boom, boom, deuces. Best class ever. That's what we all say. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Ms. Martinez. I think she has a lot of good information to share with us, and let's just thank her for being here before she even starts to talk.
Thank you, Dean Whalen. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Mia, for inviting me and having me to be able to present to the students here. And also, I want to thank Karen Bankston. I don't see her. I'm not sure if she's in the room. Karen, thank you very much to Karen and Kelly for organizing this and having this prepared for me to come and speak to you about cultural competency. As was mentioned, I do work for TriHealth. And for those that are a little unfamiliar with TriHealth Health System, we are a 5-hospital system. Good Samaritan, which is here in Clifton, is part of that system, but that's the north up in Montgomery. But we also have Bethesda Butler County. We have a new acquisition of McCullough Hyde that's over in Oxford near Miami University. And we also have TriHealth Evendale. So we have about 12,000 employees across 140 locations, including our physician practice groups, group health associates as part of TriHealth and Queen City Physicians. And we are still the 5th largest employer of Cincinnati. And we have a ton of institutes as well, the Heart Institute, the Women's Institute as well. So that's how big TriHealth is. So I want to give a little bit of personal background. I know you all saw my name is Lizette Martinez. I am Hispanic. I'm of Puerto Rican descent, but I was born in Detroit. So if you see Hispanic information, kind of pertain to me because I was not born in Puerto Rico. I was born in the Detroit area. But I've been here for 28 years here in Cincinnati. I did graduate from the University of Cincinnati in 1996. And I did graduate high school here, so I'm kind of part of the clique. That's like the first question people ask, well, high school did you go to? So I did graduate high school here in Cincinnati. So But we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we're a little bit off time, and we're going to start talking today about cultural competency. And I want to give a little bit of class objectives of what you're going to kind of take away from this discussion today. We're here to learn what cultural competency is and why it is important and how you can become more culturally competent. We are going to experience a real-life case study through a video series called Worlds Apart, and I'll show that video a little later. I usually show it at the beginning, but I want to make sure that everybody, the majority of people, were in the room, so we'll show it here in a minute. And that's going to help build awareness on communication styles. And then we'll also talk about why race and gender play a role in patient-doctor relationships. So, but we can't get started until we kind of have the brief description on what diversity is. We all know diversity means differences, right? And at TriHealth, we kind of stick to a very simple definition. TriHealth says diversity is any difference, really, that makes a difference, okay? And a lot of people look at diversity not as just differences, but they see it as different individuals valuing each other regardless of their skin, intellect, talent, or years. So people kind of take that definition of diversity and make it broader. We also actually focus a lot on what inclusion is. Inclusion is actually getting people fully engaged. And I chose this image because it reminds me of a saying that a lot of people say, and I'm not really sure who the originator of this quote is, but diversity and inclusion you can kind of talk about as if diversity is being invited to a party, but inclusion is being asked to dance. So that's when you're actually having the most fun and you're engaged. And we want everyone to feel like that, even the patients that you work with. We want them to be engaged in that dialogue as well and in their preparation and treatment as well. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to you? A lot of times when I talk to healthcare professionals about diversity and inclusion, and even senior leadership and administration, the first thing that pops in their head is cultural competency. Right? They always talk about cultural competency, being culturally competent, being culturally sensitive, providing that culturally competent care. And although we tend to think about culture as different ethnic and foreign backgrounds, it actually really pertains to every single person, because not every single person is the same as another. You can group 10 Puerto Ricans in a room and we're not all going to be the same. It just doesn't happen that way. We all grow up with experiences that filter ourselves to be a different type of person. Even in the same household, I have a brother and a sister, and none of us are exactly the same. We all have different personalities. One thing, though, I encounter a lot when I talk to clinical staff is there's a high anxiety to know a lot of different cultural nuances that happen around the world. There are a lot of different traditional things that different culture groups do all over the world, but you don't have to be the expert at all of them. And we're going to teach you an interviewing style of how to get past that later in this discussion. But I do want to share a quote that I really love that kind of really points this out, and it's said so eloquently. And Mr. Udo says, in Understanding Cultural Competence, to be culturally competent doesn't mean you are an authority in the values and beliefs of every culture. What it means is that you hold a deep respect for the cultural differences and are eager to learn and willing to accept that there are many ways of viewing the world. So you don't have to be an expert at every single thing. It's great to learn and understand, especially when you have hot topics in the city that are happening, when you have groups that are coming into the city. It's great to learn those. And there are ways that you can do that in the organization, but you don't have to feel like you have to be the expert to do that. You just have to be curious enough to want to build that relationship, and we'll talk about that later. Another great quote comes from Dr. Jones, and he says that the best way to describe cultural competence is that it is a state of mind where we respond to each other in a way where we appreciate one another's culture. There is a reciprocal space where people look to understand one another. And that's where we want people to be. We want people to have that eagerness to know about who you're dealing with, whether it's a patient, whether it's a friend, whether it's inside your workplace or outside. That's the kind of cultural competence we want for everyone. So why is cultural competency important? Well, it really drives to the population changes that are happening and that you're seeing come through the door. As our population continues to grow and change, many healthcare organizations are faced with challenging ways of how to best serve and communicate. It's just a fact. And I want to show you statistics on what that looks like and what our population is actually getting to. We are looking at real numbers of the U.S. population, and you can see back in the 60s, the majority group, which is the Caucasian group, was 85%. And as you see, as it's coming to 2050, you're seeing that number decrease because you're getting a very large population of cultural backgrounds coming into the United States. Asian, Hispanic, and African American looks like it's stabilized, but you're looking at a lot of different cultures coming into the U.S. that didn't exist before. And that number, 2050, is actually an old number. These statistics are really going to be seen in 2040, 2041, 2042. It's actually increasing at a faster rate than we thought. So the 2050 is actually already outdated. So you're going to be witnessing this big change in the United States, and we have to be aware of the people that are coming in our doors and being able to work with them and be able to treat them the way they want to be treated. So we are going to go into a video series. This is where you're going to see a business case. And I want to prepare you. I want to prepare you for the video. This is a video about a diabetic woman, and I want you to pay attention to the relationship between her and her physician and how they interact, because I am going to ask you questions afterwards. And this is the big kicker. Most of it's in Spanish, so you have to read the subtitles. So you really have to pay attention and take notes if you can, because we're also going to be going back to the video later on in the presentation. So I don't know if we can dim the lights or not to be able to see the video, but we're going to go ahead and start this. It's about 10 minutes long.
Pasé mi niñez en Puerto Rico. Vine con mi hijo, mi sobrino y mi mamá para acá. Ese edificio rojo que está allá al frente, allí fue donde yo viví 18 años y donde crié prácticamente, ayudé a criar mis hijos. Aquel edificio, el rojo.
She said, I'm going to make sure that you end up homeless. This is what she would tell my mother, that she was going to do everything in her power to make her leave this place. It basically caused her to get depressed. She did not care whether she took her medications or not. She did not care whether, what her blood sugar was. She did not test herself. She just wanted to die, basically.
A mí me mandaron psicólogo, psiquiatra. Me sentía que me asfixiaba, que me ahogaba, me pasaba llorando todos los días. No sabía qué hacer. Good morning.
Hi, dear.
Hi.
Hola, ¿cómo están?
Where have you been?
¿Dónde estás?
Why did you have your appointment?
I mean, I told her that she needs to keep them, but, sometimes she's like, she doesn't feel well, and she just wants to stay home, and she won't go anywhere.
Can you tell me why, in essence, you haven't made your appointment, or could you tell me why it's been difficult for you to come to the office? Ella me dijo que llamara para la cita. Entonces, como he tenido una serie de cosas para hacer, pues entonces, Me preocupé por otras cosas antes que mi salud, prácticamente.
I was told to call for an appointment, and since other problems came up, I decided not to take care of my health, but to take care of my problems.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable talking about the problems or the distractions that have been going on since we last saw each other? He tenido unos cuantos problemas. Por eso el teléfono ya no está bien en el 535 West. En los 51, sino en el otro apartamento por el otro lado. How often have you been checking your sugars, or have you been? El azúcar en las mañanas.
In the mornings.
A pesar de que no me convence hacerlo en la mañana, porque casi siempre el azúcar está más bajo en la mañana. Ahora, a medida que va pasando el día, como algo, pues se sube. Impacto terrible cuando me dijeron que tenía diabetes, porque de eso mismo murió mi mamá. Ella padeció mucho, porque el diabetes es algo que tiene muchas complicaciones. Es bien difícil de controlar. Y entonces eso mismo también me ha dejado un poco sin visión. Estoy viendo bien, no como antes. Eso me preocupa. From my impression, basically, you're a postmenopausal woman with a history of diabetes, which sounds rather uncontrolled, history of hypertension, which is controlled, and a history of depression in the past, as well as asthma, which also appears to be controlled since she's been on the Advair. She relatively non-compliant with care, or more is undergoing disjointed type of care. A veces siento como que los pies se me duermen un poco y los dedos.
And in my toes.
And in your toes. And is that new? I need to get peripheral neuropathy pin. ¿Una aguja?
No, una pequeña agujita para ver...
Para ver si está dormida, pero... Que me la haga con los palitos mejor, no con agujas.
She's afraid of anything that's sharp.
Feel it. It's soft. Does that hurt? I promise I won't draw blood. I won't draw blood. Okay? Just close your eyes for me and just tell me whether you feel this. Close your eyes.
Cierra sus ojos.
You feel
Dígame
this?
lo que siente.
You feel this?
¿Siente?
Yeah. Sí. Do you feel this?
¿Siente eso?
No. Good, I didn't touch you.
No lo toqué.
Porque cuando tengo el azúcar bien alto, bastante alto, me doy cuenta es porque me arden los pies. Cuando ya está baja el azúcar, no me pasa. Y puedo caminar sin problema. Cuando yo siento que se me está subiendo un poco más el azúcar, yo tomo jugo de limón y me controla bastante. O agua, bastante agua. Bueno, mi presión alta la controlo con las pastillitas que me están dando para la presión y también con ajo. El ajo es muy bueno para eso. Se controla bastante porque en realidad con una sola cosa no me podía estar, ni con el ajo solo, ni con la medicina pastilla sola. Me la controlo con esas dos. La presión.
My mother, she uses what we call home remedies. I know people who try certain remedies and they work. For some people it doesn't. But they should be encouraged to try them. And my general view on medicine is that if we're going to really make progress, we need to take into consideration and consider other forms of treatments, other therapies, other forms of medicine. I mean, you have all these different medicines out there. You have the Western medicine, but you also have Ayurvedic medicine, you have Oriental medicine. And, you know, there's a lot of things out there that maybe using combination can really make a bigger difference.
Anteriormente había dado glucofage. Okay, and you stopped that because? Paré porque todo el pelo se me estaba cayendo en pedazos. Okay. Y me caía mal el estómago. Preocupaciones porque dan efectos secundarios, las medicinas. Ve que la salud está un poco ya marcada por tanta medicina. Yo creo, para mí, que mi mamá le dio eso fue también por las medicinas, porque ella murió de cáncer también, bajo el duodeno, bajo el estómago, ella se le acumuló una masa. Y eso me dijo un doctor en Puerto Rico cuando yo fui, me dijo que posiblemente de tanta medicina que ella tuvo, se le acumulaba y no iba directamente a otro lugar a donde tenía que ayudar.
Ricardo, to be honest with you, we have a lot of things to talk about, and one visit isn't enough, okay? One thing is, I'd like to first talk about what we're going to do about your diabetes, okay? Because it could be a lot. The control could be a lot better. I have here a book. Okay, what I would like you to do for the next 2 weeks, because I would like to see you in at least 2 weeks, okay, is to check your sugar in the morning, okay, both actually before each meal and also after she's finished eating. She can check her sugar again just to see how high her sugar goes after her food, okay? Okay. For the glipizide, I know you're taking the 10 milligrams twice a day. I really would like to see what your values are before I start increasing or decreasing the dosage for you, okay? I also will see what your sugars have been doing here, okay? That's why it's important I see you in the next 1 to 2 weeks, okay? So we'll do that. And
Yo me voy a mi casa de nuevo. Y ahora creo que estoy mejorando bastante. No está como antes el azúcar. Y el asma solo una vez al día, por lo que me siento un poco más tranquila el saber que recuperé lo que creía perdido.
a lot of times we don't ask why they're non-compliant or why they're not coming to their visits. We just sort of put in the note, non-compliant with care, just not interested. And usually there are other things that are going on, dynamics that we need to understand. And provided that there's nothing acute going on, physicians shouldn't feel at fault if honestly all they've done on that one visit is just talk and figure out why, troubleshoot why things aren't working out, as opposed to just making sure that note is done and making sure that, you know, our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted with respect to the medications. I think sometimes it's okay to just sit there and talk and figure out why things aren't working.
Eso es mucha memoria que yo he tenido aquí porque aquí vinieron mis hijos pequeños. Fueron sufrimientos y alegrías. Son muchas que vivimos aquí, muchas cosas que vivimos aquí. Y por eso yo no quiero salir de aquí. Y no me van a sacar de aquí. No me van a sacar de aquí. Así porque si no. Eso es lo primero. Ser constantemente responsable de un hogar. Ese he sido yo, con mis hijos y con mi casa.
That's pretty normal with women, right? We kind of are the caregiver first, and we kind of give to everyone else. You know, if we have moms in the house, we'd rather buy food and shoes for our kids before we even buy our own medication, right? What did you guys think of the video? What can you take from the video? Because I hope you guys took notes, because we're going to talk about this later. What did you guys think about the interaction between Dr. Forson and Alicia Mercado? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. She took the time. She asked the questions in the most caring way, and she even asked her permission to see if it was okay, right, for her to tell her what personal issues she was dealing with. And normally doctors don't ask you that, but she basically asked permission. Can you tell me why or what has happened in your life that has prevented you from, you know, checking your blood sugars? Anything else? What was she doing other than her medication? What other things was she doing to complement the medications? Yes. Home remedies. What kind of home remedies was she doing? What was she doing for her diabetes? What was she taking? Yes. Blood pressure, she said she would take garlic to control her blood pressure. Yeah. What else? Yes. Yeah. No, you're on the right track. Yeah, lime juice. She was taking lime juice to control her blood sugar. Anything else for her blood sugar? Lots and lots of water. Who said that? Oh, yes. She was drinking a lot of water, which actually is pretty good for blood sugar. I'm diabetic, I know. You get thirsty naturally. So what else? What else did you see about the video? Was there anybody in the room that kind of helped the doctor with that communication? Who was in the room? She had an interpreter, right? And Joint Commission says we must have an interpreter in the room when you have a patient who does not speak English, correct? Okay. All right, well, good. So we have a lot of things that we saw in the video and the patient-doctor relationship and how they communicated with each other. So please keep those in mind because we will be utilizing some of the tools that the doctor did and what things that Alicia thought about her treatment a little later when we get into the book that you all should have received when you came in. So we're actually going to go back and talk a little bit about cultural competency again. We told you what cultural competency was. We gave you a lot of great quotes and hopefully calmed your anxiety on thinking you don't have to know every single thing. But what do you need to become culturally competent? And I want to talk about this first before I give you some steps on how to become a little bit more culturally competent because these are very critically important. So what do you need? There's a couple ingredients you need before you begin to do that. And one of them is you have to want to be. You really have to want to be culturally competent, to move towards being culturally competent and providing that care. And it takes courage. It's very scary sometimes. People can be fearful of maybe asking questions or, you know, think that they might offend. But it takes a lot of courage. It takes everything in you to kind of get to know other people and open up. And then you have to be intentional about it. You have to do it in an intentional way. And you have to match that intention with your desire to really know the other person, to be able to move past and become more culturally competent. And these are some of the things that you can do to help become culturally competent. First, learn about yourself. Everyone has a cultural background. Like I mentioned before, I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up in Detroit, so there wasn't a lot of education in schools about being Puerto Rican. I had to learn it myself. I had to learn it for myself. Asking a lot of questions at home, reading books, learning about different cultures also helps you become more culturally competent. Read in journals, watch documentaries, ask questions, asking a lot of questions to kind of get a better understanding of what other cultures are. Interact with diverse groups, and this has to be intentional. You have to do it purposefully so you can become more culturally competent. Attend diversity-focused conferences like this one. You all are here, so that's the first step. It's good. Congratulations. And then lobby for your department. This is a big one. A lot of times in hospital settings, you're so busy doing things, and sometimes in your units or departments, they don't offer opportunities for education. But if you want to learn, talk to corporate education, talk to HR, advocate for it. Ask if you know good speakers that could come and maybe even just speak to your staff in a small room or something, lobby for it. I'm sure that there's some way that you can get it at a very minimal cost because there are a lot of people out there that really want to teach. And there's education packages that aren't very expensive. So lobby for it and bring it to your department. So these are some good steps to how to get there. So we want to talk a little bit about cultural competency and why it's important for patients. So if patients feel that we understand and respect them as individuals, they're going to most likely trust what we give them as therapies and treatments. And that's going to be, the greater the trust that we have from our patients, the greater the outcomes are going to be. And I really call that building familiarity, comfort, and trust. It's called FCT. And I have a little method that I do at Tri-Health that I've kind of come across that I felt is really, really important because I've also been a patient, and some of these things were very important to me. Has anybody here been an inpatient in a hospital? Show of hands. Okay. So some of these things have been important to me as far as building trust with the people that are taking care of me. And so I call it the spa treatment, how to build trust with your patient. You need to slow down, be present with the patient, and ask questions. And these are very difficult things to do, especially when you're in high demand and short-staffed. But look at this setting. Doesn't the spa look really relaxing and comforting? Not to say we can actually provide this to our patient, but the feeling we could. How about this, customer service between the two? A lot of times when you're in a hospital room, the computer screen is way over here, the patient's over here, and your back is towards the patient. It doesn't feel too comforting with the patient. Let's try to get that feeling back to one-on-one, face-to-face. Now, of course, we're not going to pamper our patients like this, but we want them to feel comfortable, right? So spa treatment versus the hospital treatment. In a hospital, you feel lonely, you feel scary, it's kind of boring, especially if you have to stay for a long time. My stay here at UC was 2 months in a room. It gets very lonely. But in a spa kind of environment, you can bring that kind of relaxing feeling, make your patients feel more comfortable, and enjoy their stay as much as you can. You don't want them to feel that loneliness or non-trust. So what kind of customer service elements could we incorporate, and how do we help alleviate some of that stress and build that familiarity, comfort, and trust? We do it with slowing down, being present, and asking questions. And we know that slowing down takes some time because you're being pulled, you're thinking about the next patient, you're worried about, you know, whose shift change, when shift change is coming. All of these things are happening. But we need to be able to slow down and be present for the patient because they can feel that rush. When you're not there, they know that you're really not focused on them. How do they know that they're really being treated in the best way? And we want to pay close attention also to the patient safety as far as being aware of who's in the room when you're taking care of them as well. Making good eye contact and being mindful too at the same time that they might not like direct eye contact. But if you're present with them and you slow down enough and are focused, you would be able to tell by looking at their demeanor if they're comfortable with that or not. And then asking the right questions. We're going to talk a lot about this piece because I want to teach you an interviewing process to help really get to how to treat your patients. But this is really the hardest that people have, is asking the right questions. It's scary because you feel like you might offend someone, you don't know how they're going to react. I mean, you can't control how other people react to you, but you can control how you behave and how you react to them. And it's natural. We all feel scared to ask the right questions. But if we don't ask the patient the appropriate questions on how to treat them, how would we really know unless we ask them? And if their reactions are bad, there's a magic word that you can use, and that is telling them that I'm sorry. And you can tell them that I'm sorry, I'm only asking because I care and I want to treat you for whatever question that you're asking the patient. So say I'm sorry. I bet you 99% of the time things will reverse, okay? So don't be afraid to ask those questions. So thinking about Elisa Mercado, what did Dr. Forson do or say to help get to the reason why she wasn't taking care of herself? Because she really wasn't checking her sugars, she wasn't really complying, and the doctor actually said she was non-compliant in the care. But what did Dr. Forson do to kind of help her get past that? Anyone? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She wasn't rushing. She walked in very calmly. She looked at her face to face and she asked her the question, right? Anything else that she did that you guys, we talked about it earlier. She asked for permission, right? She wanted to ask her why she wasn't taking care of herself, and she really took the time to sit and hear and listen and write down all the things that were really affecting Alicia outside. What are the things that were affecting Alicia outside that kept her from taking care of herself? What happened? What was the big thing that happened? She got evicted from her apartment, right? What were you going to say? What? Same? Yeah, she got evicted from her apartment, and she had been there for 18 years. And that was her pride and joy, is being able to provide a household for her family. And that caused her to be what? What happened? She became depressed. She became depressed. And she lost really all hope. And she wasn't really taking care of herself. So we are going to now move into how we interview the patients in the right way to be able to ask them the questions we need answers for to be able to treat them. Did everybody get this booklet coming into the door? This is your gift from me to kind of use. But I really want to kind of train you all first on how to utilize the booklet because there is a lot of great information in here, but I want you to be able to use it appropriately. You're going to notice that in the booklet, there are tabs. There are tabs that have different cultural information on different backgrounds, but I want you to notice that at the top of each of these pages, there's a caution symbol that says, these are a broad generalization and should not be used to stereotype any individual. So please use these cautiously, and I really want to kind of give you an example of what I mean by that, because it can be very easy to do, especially when we're in a high, fast-paced environment. So a generalization and a stereotype are two different things. A generalization is really what I call the beginning point or the start of the conversation, okay? It's when you really have good common trends of things, but you actually want to begin the conversation and learn more about that person. So in your mind, you may have a common trend that you can learn from these tabs here, but you want to further ask questions to learn more about the person, and that's when you're really generalizing. Now, these kind of generalizations come from anthropologists who have studied these cultures for many years and have developed these common trends, and that's why they're here. But a stereotype is what I call the ending point. It's the stop point, and when you actually don't ask any questions, and that's when you've made a personal judgment in your mind by the common trend that you've read that that's what this person is, when clearly you can actually learn more about that human being by asking more questions. Just like I posed at the very beginning. I'm Puerto Rican, right? But I was not born in Puerto Rico. I was born in Detroit. So if you look at the Hispanic tab, nothing in there pertains to me because I don't have that cultural background. That wasn't me. I don't have those common trends. I love the culture. I love to learn about it, but I didn't grow up that way, okay? So really pay attention to that. And I'll give an example. And the example is also in your book. But an example of how you can determine it is if you meet Rosa, she's a Mexican woman, and you say to yourself, Rosa's Mexican, she must have a large family. Well, you've stereotyped her. And at that point, there's no other further discussion. However, if you think to yourself, Mexicans often have large families, and you proceed to ask Rosa, how many people are in your family? Then you have not made a stereotype. You've actually wanting to learn a little bit more about her. Bless you. And that was a generalization. Make sense? Okay. All right, so to better understand what your patients think about what is happening to them, there is a page right before the African American page here called the 4 C's of Culture. And these were actually a set of questions that were created by psychiatrist Dr. Arthur Kleinman, which is a set of 8 questions that he's developed in order to help you build a better relationship and understand your patients a lot better. And this is for anyone. You really want to do this with any patient that comes through your door. So the first C is called call. And really the bottom line is we want to know what the patient calls their problem. We want to understand that, but you don't want to ask it specifically call. You want to ask it in a way where you say, what do you think is wrong? okay? And the reason we want to ask it that way is because we really want to know what the patient has in their mind and what they're thinking. And I'll give you an example. And these examples also lie in your book. These are evidence-based cases that have happened. But for example, among the Asian people, epilepsy is referred to as the spirit catches you and you fall down. Seeing epilepsy as a spirit possession, which really has a positive connotation, and that's for some people of the Hmong population. So it's very different than seeing it as a disruption of the electrical signals in the brain, right? That changes then the dynamic between the patient clinical staff conversation, because now you know what the patient actually sees in that particular series of having an epileptic seizure. They don't see it as something bad, but we need to make sure it's controlled. So understanding that changes that dynamic in that conversation. So that's the first C, is you want to know what the patient calls their problem, or you want to ask it as, what do you think is wrong? The second one is, what do you think caused your problem? And I'm actually going to use myself in this because this happens to me a lot. A lot of times, human beings don't believe that germs cause diseases. Sometimes faith gets in the way, and I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I get sick and I say, oh my God, I'm being punished for something I did. Oh, what did I do, God? And I get on my knees and I pray, please take this away. Well, there are patients that are very, believe very much in that. And that can really change the dynamics in your conversation, and you might want to call pastoral care and have clergy in the room next to you to make your patient feel less anxiety and feel a little bit more comfortable. I grew up Catholic, and guilt is king, and if you've been in a Latin mea culpa mass, you understand that that is a very deep, deep belief. And so having clergy will help with alleviating that, especially if you know that that's what's causing anxiety for your patient. The next C is called cope. What do you cope with, or how do you cope with your condition? This particular C is very important. You have to be very sensitive about it. A lot of times we joke around about things of this nature, but a lot of times you want to know, what have you done to try to make it better? And a lot of times people use home remedies, right? Alicia Mercado used garlic to control her high blood pressure. But there are a lot of home remedies that are done, or traditional medicines that are used, that could interfere with the treatment or medication that your physician is prescribing and could cause some damage. So asking the questions, what have you done to try to make it better, and saying it in a very sensitive, non-judgmental way can really help your patient open up to tell you some of the things that they've done, okay? Sometimes you may see some Asian populations use coining, so they rub coins on the skin to relieve and release bacteria, and that's a belief that they have. And you may see bruising. You may just want to ask what they've done or what this is in a non-judgmental way, and not specifically saying, oh my God, this patient's being abused. You want to ask the right questions first so that they open up and tell you, so you have a good understanding of what it is that has happened, okay? So this one is very, very sensitive, and we want to make sure that we get all that information so it doesn't interfere with treatment. The next one is called concern, and we have a lot of questions in this area because we really want to know what patients are concerned with. We want to know what potential complications do they fear. Maybe do they know anyone else who has tried the treatment that the doctor is prescribing? And one of the cases that is talked about in the book is about a diabetic patient who experienced a friend having to take insulin and soon after becoming blind. And so they had a huge fear of starting the insulin treatment because they didn't want to go blind. They connected those two. Well, understanding that changes that dialogue so that you can better educate your patient on what the benefits are of taking insulin or other medications that they need for taking care of their chronic conditions. Okay? So when we look at Alicia Mercado's story, she kind of had the 4 C's in her dialogue in the video. She had a lot of home remedies. What did she think caused her conditions? She thought they came because her mom had them too. She was concerned about taking a lot of medication because her mom had passed away from cancer and had a big mass in her stomach, and somebody told her that that mass was just a bunch of medicine that didn't go anywhere. That, we have to make sure that we open up with these questions so that we understand better from the patient, and having that dialogue helps the doctor better treat the patient. We know that she had a lot of personal issues, right, that affected her. She was highly depressed. How did that physician communicate? She was very, very, very much engaged with her patient. She asked permission. She talked to her very, very calmly. She wasn't rushed. And then with the language barrier, you also saw that there was an interpreter in the room to help with that communication between the doctor and the patient. And we make sure that the interpreters are involved with that care. They're part of the team because we want to make sure that all the information is communicated correctly for not just the patient, but for the doctor as well, that you both can understand each other. So I want to talk a little bit about why this is important. So we know that 1 in 2 Americans have a chronic condition, right? Some populations are at higher risk. Hispanic Americans are at 66% higher risk for diabetes. African Americans are at 77% higher risk. These chronic conditions are really 75% of our healthcare spend. That's huge. And diabetes alone has increased, tripled in the last 15 years. This is huge to see this chronic condition increase that drastically. But only half of patients adhere to medication. That's a huge number. That leads to $290 billion in health costs. And so if we can't help our patients get to understanding and trust us enough to take that medication, we're going to continue to pay these bills. And the response from CMS is drastic because they're no longer reimbursing our hospitals for readmissions of these cases. And that eventually will hurt our pockets at the end of the day. So that's why this is so important. And then you look at race and gender and how that adds another complexity issue to non-adherence of the medications we are prescribing. Non-white patients are 53% less adherent to medications than white. That's an astounding number, huge, huge trust factor there. We have to build that trust with our patients. I think that Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said that trust is the highest form of human motivation. And if we can't build that trust with the people that we're serving, they're gonna continue to do what they feel is best for them. Okay. Women are 10% less adherent to medications than men. And it's huge. Women rather care for other people than themselves. And we saw that very true in Alicia's story. And even at the very last statement, she said that the most important thing to her was being responsible for taking care of her place and her children. Those were the only 2 things. She never put herself in that equation. So it's very, very important to recognize and understand that as well. So I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. We're almost getting close to 1 o'clock, and should I open up for questions? Yeah, okay. So I want to make sure I give you a time for questions before I end with a reflection. Does anybody have any questions about the materials that I talked about? Yes.
I just have a comment.
Yes, sir.
As healthcare providers, I would recommend being taught about raising parents, one common phrase,
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Very well said. Very true. Yeah. He said he wants to make sure that we understand and build awareness that phrases can be very offensive. And one phrase that is commonly used is "you people," and so that can be very offensive. Yeah. Thank you very much for that comment. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So what is the difference between cultural competency and cultural sensitivity?
Oh, it's the same. It's having that awareness. Being culturally sensitive or being culturally competent is somebody who is curious and wants to learn and is there to be able to engage the other individual, whether it's a patient or another person, human being sensitive to that person and understanding who they are, and just building that relationship by asking questions and really talking from the heart. I am one person that always says, I don't care what you say. We can say whatever it is we want to say on this earth. It doesn't matter what you say, it's how you say it. And when you say it with love and you say it with the intent to really understand the other person, then you're becoming competent and really building that relationship. So being sensitive and being competent and being culturally competent and sensitive is the same thing. Okay, so I do want to end with just a reflection so you all can understand the differences on treating. Who has learned what the golden rule is? Does anybody know what the golden rule is? Yes. Treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Okay, that's excellent. Treating others the way you want to be treated is the golden rule. Has anybody heard what the platinum rule is? Anybody? Yes, sir. Exactly. Exactly. We want to treat others the way they want to be treated, and the only way we can do that is if we ask them the right questions to do it. Okay? So I just have one last video that I want to leave with a reflection. Unless anybody has any other questions, I'll go ahead and play this. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you have other questions, you're free to, I'm sure we can get you contact information. I can also provide different slides or videos if you want them also for your units and departments.